Ancient historians tend to use speeches a great deal, and they're not doing that because they have a recording, a verbatim report in any way of what was said, usually. And in the case of Catiline's speech in Sallust, that's particularly obvious because not only is this a secret meeting of the conspirators, but Sallust has actually said in the sentence before the speech starts that they have gone in abditam partem ideum, they are in a private room of the house. So this is very much a speech happening in sort of secret. What was totally accepted among ancient historians was that you would be presented in the course of the narrative with speeches made by the protagonists saying essentially the sort of thing that the historian thought it was likely they would have said in the circumstances. And I'm there sort of paraphrasing Thucydides, a Greek historian who is one of the historians who sort of specifically says that's how I write speeches, by writing what I think they're likely to have said. But it applies to most ancient historians. So it's not very surprising that Sallust gives a speech, well, here towards the beginning, and he also gives one towards the end of the work to his chief character, Catiline. Part of the reason I think that this also works well in the context of ancient historiography is that the giving of speeches at all was a fundamental part of political culture. It's not just what he happened to say, it is a speech, a rhetorical speech, which, you know, Sallust presents him as sort of having composed and presented to his conspirators. So it's persuasive. It's full of rhetorical devices drawing on their loyalty. Starts off by sort of already putting them on the back foot, by saying, well, if it weren't the case that I already knew that you were very loyal to me, then we would be in a worse position than we are. But of course, you know, I do know that you're loyal to me, and so on. So ancient historians tend to, and Sallust particularly does in this case, characterise their protagonists as they make their speeches by the kind of way that they use rhetoric and techniques of persuasion. So this is a persuasive speech. Catiline is arguing with his co-conspirators and saying, well, now is the time to strike, which actually ends up not being the case. And you can go through in detail and sort of see how he sort of, well, corrupts them, essentially, how he does through this speech that Sallust, well, as it were, quotes, that Sallust puts into his mouth, however we want to say this, how he does the same thing that Sallust is saying in the narrative that he typically did, by drawing on their personal loyalty, by promising them riches, by sort of appealing to their violent nature. And we see him dramatically doing this with rhetorical questions and exhortations, that sort of thing.